So your seat good? Get the mirrors all adjusted? You can see everything okay? Just stay off the freeways, all right? I don't want you going out on those yet. Just leave your phone in your purse. I don't want you texting. Okay?
Daddy, okay.
Okay. There you go. Be careful.
Thanks, Dad.
Call me, but not while you're driving. We knew this day was coming. That's why we bought a Subaru.
Good morning and welcome to Radio Friends on this Wednesday, the 9th of July. Good to have you with us today. We got a story for you. Pablo is back with us. Pablo is kind of like Cher, only one name though. Good to have you here,
Thank you very
Pablo.
much. Thank you very much.
You're a wonderful storyteller, but you tell your stories first person, don't you?
Well, not this particular one, but usually I do first person.
What's
that's
this
right.
one about?
This is about the incident at Bleeding Creek Treacle. It's
okay.
It's based on a true story. Based on.
All right, so let's go ahead with Pablo and the incident at Bleeding Creek Treacle.
You did it. Well, little Carly, she certainly had missed her father, how strong and gentle he had been. But he disappeared in that awful war and never returned, leaving her, the little girl, Carly, and her mother to work the farm themselves. But they were able to do it. There was a train that passed nearby frequently, and they would sell their goodies from the garden to the engineers, would stop their train just for little Carly. And little Carly, she was never alone, for down on the creek, she knew all of the creatures, and she really enjoyed hearing the trains pass by on that double-track trestle above. And they would wave to her, and then there was that great oak tree. That great oak tree that she called Father Oak, that she would love to ascend to that tree to the lofty heights, and there she could see to the world beyond. And it was her father, you see, for those branches were like her father's arms, so supportive at every moment. Well, then came the great storm of that year, autumn of that year. It was cold. It came near midnight. The storm shook the little house to its very foundation. She flew from that bed knowing that something was going to happen, something terrible was going to happen, and she could hear the sound of the water. The roar of the water was increasing, and she heard the double-track trestle begin to split apart and fall down into the water. And she headed towards that door, and she grabbed that coat of many colors, and out into the storm she went. And she placed one hand over the other as she moved along that fence that her father had made. And she heard the train come from left to east. She knew it was coming. She knew it was coming. She had to get there quickly, but to stop the train, but to stop it. Because how could the engineer know that there was no longer any such thing as the double-track trestle? And then it was too late as that train tumbled down into the mass of wreckage and split timbers. And she heard the screams of the passengers. But she kept going. She kept going. So close now. She was close enough now to place the palm of her hand on the side of that tree, Father Oak, but it was leaning. The huge tree was leaning away, and it crashed down to the other side. That the violent water had deprived it of its soil of support, and it crashed down to the other side with a thud that rivaled the thunder above. And Father Oak lay there, but she knew there was another train coming from the other direction, this one west to east. Now, reacting more than thinking, she grabbed a hold of the first root, and across that tree she went, that horizontal tree, and she could hear the water violently flowing beneath her feet. Then hand over hand over hand through its branches to the other side, she made it all the way to the little cabin. The old man who had the lanterns, who was there for the purpose of signaling whatever to the train. But the old man, she knew he couldn't stand up to that awful storm. When she passed in front of it, he handed that already lit lantern out and handed it to her. He handed that lantern to her, and she turned around with the grace of a gazelle, and she headed towards that train track, and she stood in the middle of it. And then came that other train, that second train from west to east, and faster now slower. She heard the steam, the sound of the steam, and it rolled to a stop right in front of her, barely an arm's length in front of her, and a very, very firm hand reached down and pulled her into the cabin. And there she told him the awful story, the screams of the passengers she had heard. And that train began to inch forward just so slowly. And then at dawn, there it stood, the edge of Bleeding Creek. And how ghastly the sight was. It was a gray and joyless dawn. tumbled mess of the passengers and what had been the remains of the trestle. And immediately north of it was that great tree, Father Oak, that lay there, having taken her from the side of death to the side of life, and she saved those passengers in the second train. Little Carly did it, you know. With the help of Father Oak, little Carly did it herself, you see. And she became America's hero, America's tiniest hero in that year 1868, in the incident at Bleeding Creek Treacle.
Wow. So this story is based on a true story?
Based on a true story. I read for all kinds of things, for dramatic episodes of almost any kind, and I found this, and I brought it home to Missouri.
So
Here.
how much embellishing did you do?
Oh, I would say maybe a third of it is my embellishment.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun.
Yes, yes. But it's an interesting story. I was hanging on to it by a thread, not knowing what was going to happen.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So what year was that set in?
Well, I said 1868, but I think that's pretty close when it actually happened.
Mm-hmm. How many stories, Pablo, do you have in your mind that you can just start spewing
I am
forth
35, and that's low for a storyteller. I've had Larry Brown, for example, because he could triple, quadruple that, because they're doing it for a lot longer.
Right.
But he's my mentor, and I follow pretty much his patterns.
Yeah. I've always been fascinated by storytellers. My father could tell wonderful stories, not as a professional storyteller, but he would come forth with stories that would make my hair stand up. He was born in Italy, and my grandfather and my father would sit together in the summertime under a big elm tree in our backyard, and they would tell stories of the old country. And I never knew whether these stories were actually true or if they were making them up.
Did it matter?
No, it didn't matter because they stuck with me. But storytelling is a wonderful art. In some ways, I think it's a lost art. And I'm glad that you and Larry Brown and others like you are with us and among us.
It's an old
share.
art form.
Yeah.
It was a teaching system as well.
You've got an event coming up September 13th and 14th.
It's the Centralia Battle. Centralia Battlefield. It will take place on the battlefield in which the incident actually
And you'll be
occurred.
telling stories then?
Certainly.
Okay, and then another one September 20th?
The Heritage event here in Columbia, September 20th and 21st.
Okay, and Arrow Rock, October 11th and 12th?
Well, the one right before that, that's the big one, the walk back in time. That's the big one, the last weekend in September.
Okay.
The really big one, not
All right.
Prejudice.
All right, if people want more information, they can contact you how, Pablo?
The easiest way to remember it would be windvoices.net.
All right, you got it. Pablo, thank you so much for coming by.
My pleasure.
Tomorrow, Gumbo Bottoms, Kathy Barton and Dave Pera are with us. They're going to sing a song for their special performance coming up this weekend. We're out of time for today. I want to remind you our program directed by Travis McMillan of the Reynolds Journalism Institute. Audio is Pat Akers from KBIA. Our floor director is Lowell Thomas, and our assistant producer and guest coordinator, Uncle James Mauser.